Football at 4, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast and brought to you by PlaySugarHouse.com. Sign up now. They'll match your first deposit up to $250. Go to PlaySugarHouse.com. Win real money with their sports book along with casino games from the comfort of your home. Must be 21 or older to play. Gambling problem, 1-800-GAMBLER. What's going on, everybody? Happy Hour Football Friday. Pete Thompson in 1 hour. Casey Joyner, 5:15 tonight. John Keim joins us at the bottom of the hour. He'll be our outside view today from Washington. But some breaking news with the Eagles and Football at 4. Andrew DiCecco is here to deliver it for us. Looks like we have some news on first-round pick Jalen Reagor and his status for the game on Sunday, Andrew. What do we got?
Yeah, so Jalen Reagor was a full participant at practice today, and obviously Doug Peterson indicated that he's not going to play anybody that's, less than 100%, but it's trending in the direction that he's going to play, which is kind of miraculous when you think of where he stood a couple weeks ago when it was supposed to be a 4-week timeline for his injury, and we weren't expected to see him until about week 3 or 4. So that's definitely encouraging news, and they could definitely use him on Sunday.
Right, so he was a full participant yesterday, a full participant today, which typically would mean if you practice on Friday, listed as full, that you would play on Sunday. Let's talk about the impact that he could bring. I mean, there were some thoughts, all right, if he doesn't play, what would that do to the offense? Where do you see him? What kind of impact do you see him having? Do you see one right off the bat? Or is he going to be a guy that maybe is going to take a little while to get acclimated to the offense into this league?
Well, Jalen Reagor is one of the rare rookies that I can actually see him making an impact in the first 4 weeks of the season, rather than some other guys who may take, till midseason and really catch their stride. He's a guy that you really don't need to force feed targets to. You can kind of give him the ball on short dump offs and let him take advantage of his ability to create yards in space, or on jet sweeps as a runner, and even as a returner, which they really could use that spark. And I think that you'll see him make a relatively early impact. And really, when you look at the receiving core as it stands right now, if you take Reagor out of it, you really only have Deshaun Jackson that has that big play potential that you can really count on. Obviously, John Hightower has some speed as well, but you really can't count on, a day 3 guy to step in in his first NFL game to really make an impact. I think Jalen Reagor is going to be in position to make some plays on Sunday.
That they're rushing him back at all too quickly? I mean, you would think it's week 1. They wouldn't put him in a position to, get him hurt again. But it just seems with the timeline that we've heard from the beginning that it is kind of quick.
Yeah, I do agree with you there. And with the shoulder injury, you certainly don't want to rush that because you can obviously make it worse. And especially when you look at this game, the Eagles can certainly get by without Jalen Reagor. Washington doesn't really have a formidable stable of offensive weapons that really can keep pace with the Eagles even without Jalen Reagor. So I think that they would be best served to kind of maybe hold him out this week and move forward with him in week 2. I think it struck me as a little quick to see that turnaround so quickly like that. But if it were me, I would probably hold him out of this week.
Watching that Chiefs game last night, and I know the Eagles aren't the Chiefs, but they do have a lot of principles. Doug Peterson, Andy Reid. The Eagles have added a lot of weapons, a lot of speed. That was really the theme of the offseason. When you watched the Chiefs last night, do you kind of think about, I wonder if the Eagles are going to maybe, I don't know, model themselves is the right word, but with all this speed, do you see them utilizing guys in similar roles to what some of those guys in Kansas City are used?
Yeah, it's kind of hard to watch that game last night and not envision the Eagles offense utilizing some of the same principles that the Chiefs offense used, and especially last night, you got to see it. They have so many positionless type players you can kind of move around. You look no further than their tight end duo of Dallas Goedert and Zach Ertz. They have the running back core that I actually do think Boston Scott's going to be a big factor in Sunday's game with his pass receiving ability. And then you have the different receivers, Deshaun Jackson and obviously Jalen Reagor if he's active, and Greg Ward can do so many different things. He's a security blanket for Carson Wentz. They have so many weapons, and I really do envision an offense that's very similar to what you saw with Kansas City last night.
How concerned are you with this offensive line? Because it is scaring me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you and me both, Hunter. There's definitely some issues there, and one of the things that I wrote for Inside the Birds is, Jason Peters is moving out to left tackle, but he hasn't played left tackle. Obviously, it's muscle memory, but he has not played left tackle all summer. He spent the summer learning a new position at right guard, of course. How is he going to hold up at 38 years old? What's his reaction time going to be like? What's his mirror technique going to look like going against a guy like Chase Young? You know, they have such a Washington is, you know, they're two lines deep as far as players they can shuffle in and out and provide, you know, high level of play. I think that, you know, and Jason Peters has a propensity to leave games, leave parts of games, leave an entire game. That's a definite concern. And we also look at, you know, Lane Johnson. It's a small possibility that he may not play on Sunday. And Jack Driscoll, of course, the rookie, could be making his first NFL start. They have some concerns there. And if the line suffers one injury, they're going to have some serious problems. When you look at what some of the guys that they may have to turn to, the reserve players that they have, I believe only Nate Herbig's played any NFL snaps, and that was just 3 snaps. So obviously they need, if it were me, I would look to add a veteran offensive lineman in the coming weeks.
Football 4, Andrew DiCecco is with us on a Football Friday. We'll get his take on this game in just a second. More news and notes from today's practice and Andy Reid. Doug Peterson's presser. What happens? Okay, 2 scenarios. What happens if Peters gets hurt in the middle of the game? That's one. What if Lane Johnson can't go and Peters gets hurt in the middle of the game?
Shoot, man, that's a couple worst case scenario circumstances right there. If I had to guess, I would say that, well, obviously there's going to have to be some shuffling regardless. So I think that they would possibly put Isaac Seumalo at tackle. Isaac Seumalo, if you remember when he was a rookie, he played in some jumbo packages at tackle. But then, you know, you shuffle some things around and maybe Jack Driscoll plays guard and obviously Matt Pryor stays where he is. Matt Pryor, they gave him a look at left tackle, Mike, but he's really not a left tackle, and he struggled there mightily. So I think that when in the middle of a game, you can't play around with, you know, throwing a Jordan Mailata in there where he would just get probably eaten alive. He hasn't had the reps this summer to really get into any sort of a rhythm. So I think you would probably have to put an offensive lineman that you know has started games and has played at a high level in Isaac Seumalo. Obviously, he's never started a tackle, but he does offer that in his skill set. So that's the direction that I would go.
Obviously, an offensive line that struggles is going to impact the entire game, but specifically, how is this going to impact the running game? And what if Miles Sanders isn't even in play? I just think that it's such a recipe for success to even establish the run.
Yeah, it's going to affect the running game in a big way. When you look at how ferocious that Washington defensive front is, they're going to be bearing down on the Eagles all game long. That's what I anticipate. So I think what the Eagles could do to kind of counter that is to look to some of these dump-offs, to a Boston Scott, to a Corey Clement, and kind of take advantage of their aggressive, penetration. And I think that that's a good way to counter that, because I don't see them really getting much going by way of the ground. I think that they're going to have to do some quick throws. Possibly, I think Greg Ward's in for a big game, as being that comfortable security blanket, and knowing that Carson Wentz could be under pressure. He's going to have to get rid of the football fairly quickly. And so I think him and Boston Scott would be 2 guys to look for.
Andrew, you look at that front of the Washington football team. Everybody is talking about how good they are, but where is the spot that you think the Eagles can exploit?
That's a great question, and the way that I see it, I think that they could take advantage of the second level. They have a lot of linebackers, in my opinion, that could really play they defend the run fairly well. But I think if you can get some guys in space, you can really take advantage of a guy like John Bostic, who doesn't run particularly well. Kevin Pierre-Louis, they're one of their outside linebackers. He moves well, but he's also very small. So if you can get alignment onto the second level on him, I think you can get some things going there. And obviously we're going to see our old friend Ronald Darby on Sunday. So someone that you could take advantage of, certainly on slants and sluggos that he really struggled with here in Philadelphia, and of course a double move. So there's going to be some areas of opportunity there for sure. Carson just needs to have at least a couple seconds to get rid of the football here.
Last year, Dwayne Haskins had a phenomenal game against the Eagles. Do you think that Jim Schwartz has that in, the front of his brain, that he's going to have to make sure he doesn't look that great again?
Yeah, I think you're going to see a lot more aggressive approach to the game here with Jim Schwartz as far as the pass rush. They do have a deep pass rush rotation now. They have the best defensive tackle trio in football. You're going to see a line rotation. I think they're really just not going to play around and let Dwayne Haskins sit back there and find Terry McLaurin, find Steven Sims Jr. I think you're going to see him just really attack. There's going to be an attack style to the Eagles defense this year. And the fact that you have Darius Slay on the back end certainly frees Jim Schwartz up to be a little bit more aggressive this year.
You know, one thing, too, we keep talking about their defensive front. What about their offensive line? Is that an area where, you know, the Philadelphia Eagles can – because I don't know what to expect from their pass rush. I don't know if Barnett's going to play, and if he does, what you're going to get from him. Banningham's another year older. You're missing Hargrave today. So in an area where you thought maybe you can have a good advantage, what's that look like up front, the Eagles' defensive front against their offensive line?
Yeah, Mike, there's going to be opportunities there. Washington's offensive line is far from a stellar unit. There's obviously, I do like Morgan Moses, the right tackle, quite a bit, but I think there's going to be some opportunities on the left side. They do have a couple young linemen who I do like, and Sadiq Charles from LSU and Keith Ishmael from San Diego State. They're not ready to play just yet. They're going to be depth guys. But I do think that there's going to be opportunities there. And they really, like you said, Derek Barnett might not play this week, but I think the Eagles' defensive line is strong enough to get by without him, considering that they're not exactly going up with such a stingy unit up front.
Yeah, who's kind of an X-factor player for them that concerns you on their offense?
Oh, for me, it's Steven Sims Jr., the slot receiver. That's one of the guys that I think I predict to have a breakout season, not just for Washington, but I think he's going to become a national name this year. Last season, he had 34 catches for 310 yards and 4 touchdowns, but he really made an impact on special teams. I believe he averaged close to 26 yards a kick return. He's someone that while teams are going to look to shade over to prevent the big play from Terry McLaurin, Steven Sims is going to eat in the underneath there in the short dump offs, and he's a very nuanced route runner. He has a great feel for finding the open spots in zone. And I think he really started to come on last season over the last 3 weeks, and you're really going to see him take advantage of the team's third best corners. And I think that, and obviously on the other side, they added veteran Dontrell Inman, but I think Steven Sims is going to be an X factor for Washington.
It's interesting you bring that up because I was thinking, all right, with the Eagles, one of their worst spots is clearly linebacker. Can you see a scenario where that Washington offense just tries to deliver underneath and attack that linebacking core?
Yeah, sure can, Hunter. So Steven Sims is a guy that obviously I think can do that. But two guys to really take note of are going to be J.D. McKissick and Antonio Gibson, the two running backs that Washington has. If you look at what Scott Turner, their offensive coordinator, said in his video conference earlier in the offseason, those are two guys that he highlighted specifically as far as being able to exploit their athleticism in one-on-one coverage. And those are two guys that are very proficient pass catchers, and they have tremendous speed. So you're going to look for those guys to get isolated on a guy like Nathan Gary, and I think that there's going to be some advantages there for Washington. The Eagles' pass rush will need to get home because McKissick has world-class speed, and Gibson is such a phenomenal, versatile player, one of my favorite guys that were in the draft. I think those are two guys that are going to find success underneath.
Last year in the first game, Deshaun Jackson had a really big game. They exploited the Washington secondary. You saw Wentz and him connect. How big of a role does Jackson have in this particular game for you? Do you think they go right back to that same formula and try to hit him a couple of times in the deep game, or do you think they, try to utilize some of these other guys and use Jackson as more of a decoy?
I think early on they're going to go to Jackson until Washington, some team proves that they can stop it. I think that they can even open the game with the deep bomb. They really stretch out that secondary. Obviously, they know Ronald Darby very well. They know his tendencies. They know his weaknesses, and he obviously struggles with the double move and the slant and goes and things like that. He's not a guy that can really play off. He really needs to be up there. He doesn't really process things quickly. He takes chances, and I think there's going to be opportunity there to make plays. Now, I can also foresee what you were saying, that they could use Deshaun as a decoy. At least later in the game, I think they could hit him with a couple of big plays. And, just when Washington thinks they're going to go back to him, and they hit him with the Jalen Reagor. They get J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, going up to get the football between the hashes. And then all of a sudden you see your tight ends become into play, and it opens things up for the entire offense, which is why I think it's so vital that Deshaun stays healthy for at least 13 to 14 games this year.
What do you expect out of Avonte Maddox in this game? I feel like, there's going to be nights where he's going to be in some serious trouble due to his size. How do you think that this matchup lines up for him?
This matchup, he's going against a veteran in Dontrell Inman, and I think if he should be able to hold up. Dontrell Inman's not a burner by any count, and Maddox has shown that he has a very high football IQ. He's very instinctive, and he's adept to making plays on the football. Inman doesn't create much separation, and he doesn't not necessarily an above the rim type player. So I think Maddox will be okay in this game. It's when you get with some of those explosive, 6'3", 6'4" guys. They play above the paint. They play above the rim there. They're red zone factors. That's when he really runs into problems, much like what you saw last year in Week 3 against the Green Bay Packers when he struggled with Devontae Adams.
Yeah, I know the coaching staff is new in Washington, and the culture seems a little bit different. But how different is this Washington team, in your opinion, from last year to this year? I mean, last year, they win 4 games? I mean, is this a team that can be one of those 4-win teams that makes the jump, or is this a team that still struggles, to kind of win, to get to 500?
Well, I really like what they've done to add. Obviously, they built the culture there. They've established a new culture with Ron Rivera, and they've added a lot of young talent to kind of grow with, Mike. But I don't think that they're ready to make that jump just yet. I still view them as a 5 or 6 win team. I do, however, really like what they've done with the wide receiver position. They have Terry McLaurin. They have Steven Sims, who they found as an undrafted free agent. Antonio Gandy-Golden's a 6'4" rookie that can really go up and get the football from Liberty. He went to Liberty. He's not ready to play just yet, but he may make an appearance in the red zone for a play or two this week. So he's a guy to keep an eye on. They also found an undrafted player who I predicted would make their ball club in Isaiah Wright from Temple, who's a poor man's Jalen Reagor. He's a little bit taller, but he can do many of the things that Jalen can do. And I love Antonio Gibson. Antonio Gibson is pretty much the reason why they were willing to part with Adrian Peterson. They felt comfortable with his ability to impact the game as a runner and as a receiver. He only had 71 touches last season for Memphis, and I believe he scored on 12 of them. So he has a lot of big play potential, has yet to scratch the surface on what he can do. And then obviously their defensive line is tremendous. That's the heart and soul of their team. That's what's going to keep them in games, but ultimately it's going to be their second and third levels that kind of are going to be the Washington's detriment.
McLaurin burned Philly a couple times last year. Is this Slay? Is he going to be following him around?
Yeah, this is a week where I anticipate Slay traveling with Terry McLaurin. McLaurin obviously burned the Eagles twice last season, and they're not going to. I can assure you that Jim Schwartz is going to make sure that he's not the guy that's going to torment their secondary again.
Yeah, that was a big problem last year, figuring out what to do with him. It'll be good to see what Slay brings to the table. What is your opinion of Haskins and what kind of player he will be in 2020?
Well, Haskins was a player that didn't have a lot of stability around him. There was a lot of moving parts, that he wasn't surrounded with an array of offensive talent. I think getting that first year under his belt was going to be tremendous for his development. Last season he had a very uneven season. He started 7 games. He completed only close to 59% of his passes, only 1,365 yards, 7 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. So there's obviously room for improvement there. I think getting a guy like Scott Turner in his corner, who you got to see what he was able to do with Kyle Allen last season with the Carolina Panthers. Kyle Allen started 12 games, threw for over 3,000 yards, 17 touchdowns, and he was, he's a marginal quarterback. But you got to see what Scott Turner was able to do to kind of play to his strengths, give him a little bit more liberties to take advantage of one-on-one coverage rather than micromanage. I think that's going to be paramount for a quarterback like Dwayne Haskins. X-factor
player for the Eagles.
On defense, I say Nickel Roby-Coleman, and on offense, I would say Boston Scott.
All right. I'm interested to see how they use Scott this year. I mean, especially with week 1 with Sanders being a little iffy, I'm wondering and Corey Clement, I think, practiced full today, if memory serves, so he should play. But I'm really interested to see what kind of role Boston Scott has on this team. I mean, because last year he was just kind of like, we have to use you. How does he graduate to the next level? What do you see for him?
Well, I think this week kind of plays to his strengths because Miles Sanders is a little bit banged up. We don't know if he's going to get a full workload. I would anticipate not, considering he hasn't really taken many snaps over the past month or so. I think that Boston Scott he's really not built to handle more than really 10 touches a game, given his size but I do think that he's going to be a factor in the passing game. And now you really get a full season of him. So you get to utilize him in different ways. So he's going to be an impact on special teams. He's going to impact the passing game, and he showed that he can kind of grind out some of those tough yards. He's a terrific one-cut runner. He surprised me on some short yardage situations, and his contact balance is outstanding. So I do think there's going to be a role for him. When everyone's healthy in a perfect scenario, I anticipate him getting maybe only 6 to 8 touches a game. But this week he could get as many as 10. So we'll certainly see how it lines up.
All right. Andrew DiCecco, DiCecco NFL, Football at 4, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. And we'll get your pick on the game in just a second. Carson Wentz, by the way, 5-0 against Washington since the start of 2017. He's completed almost 70% of his passes in those games. This has been a team he has owned. 14 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, a 111 passer rating, and the Philadelphia Eagles have gone down to Landover and beaten Washington their last 6 tries, and all-time at FedEx Field, they are 14-9. They are 5.5-point favorite for Sunday's matchup, which you can hear right here on 97.3 ESPN. Andrew DiCecco, final score is?
Eagles 24, Washington football team 16.
All right, there you go. A little 1-0 start. What did Collingsworth say last night? Nothing better than a 1-0 start. And then Michael said, 2-0.
Typical commentary.
Yep. All right, happy hour Friday. Andrew DiCecco, he's got Philly beating Washington 24-16. He'll be back on Tuesday as we take a look back at that game and ahead to the L.A. Rams next week during Football at 4. Have a great weekend, Andrew.
Guys, you too. Enjoy the game.
You do the same. He, like all guests, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda hotline.